My mom belongs here, just like everyone else. The little girl doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't cry. She just stands there, calm and steady. And somehow, that single sentence makes the entire bus station fall silent. People stop walking, phones come out, because no one expects a child to challenge a whole system with dignity. Elena Brooks had always been the kind of woman who tried not to take up too much space, not in a physical way, in an emotional way. She was the person who apologized even when she wasn't wrong, who smiled when she felt uncomfortable, who chose peace over conflict, even when that peace came at her own expense. Right now, she was exhausted, not just from the trip, but from life. She and her daughter were moving to Oregon to stay with her brother. Temporary, she told herself. Just until she could get back on her feet. Just until things felt stable again. But stability is a luxury when you're a single mother trying to start over. Every decision feels heavy. Every mistake feels expensive. Elena wasn't weak, she was careful. Careful not to upset anyone. Careful not to cause trouble. Careful not to be labeled as difficult or dramatic. She had learned, like many women do, that survival sometimes meant shrinking. That day, at the bus station, Elena just wanted to get through it quietly, pick up their tickets, find their seats, keep Maya close, make it through one more stressful moment without attracting attention. Maya, on the other hand, hadn't learned any of that yet. She hadn't learned to make herself smaller. She hadn't learned to doubt whether she belonged in a space. She hadn't learned that sometimes adults stay quiet even when something feels wrong. Maya watched everything. The tone people used, the way eyes lingered too long, the way kindness could disappear the moment authority stepped in. She didn't analyze it. She felt it. And when something felt unfair, her body reacted before her mind could talk her out of it. That was the difference between them. Elena had learned to pause. Maya had learned to speak. They loved each other deeply, but they moved through the world differently. Elena protected by avoiding conflict. Maya protected by confronting it. You could see it in the way Elena held her daughter's hand a little tighter when someone raised their voice. And you could see it in the way Maya lifted her chin, almost instinctively, when she sensed tension. Elena didn't want trouble. Maya didn't want injustice. And sometimes, those two desires quietly collide. To Elena, keeping her head down felt like safety. To Maya, silence felt like permission. Elena had been carrying too much for too long. Bills, worry, responsibility. The constant pressure of being the adult who had to keep everything together. She didn't want her daughter to see her struggle. She didn't want Maya to feel afraid, so she taught her gentleness, politeness, patience. But what she didn't realize was that Maya was also learning something else. She was learning how to read the room, how to notice when power was being misused, how to sense when someone was being treated as less than. And she was learning it not from lessons, but from watching her mother endure. That's what made this moment so powerful, because this wasn't just a story about a child standing up to authority. It was a story about two different ways of surviving, one shaped by years of responsibility and compromise, the other shaped by pure instinct and an unbroken belief in fairness. Elena thought strength meant staying calm and getting through it. Maya thought strength meant saying, "This isn't right. Neither was wrong." But only one was about to change everything. But right now, back in the bus station, before anyone raises their voice, before anyone records a thing, Kara Milton makes her entrance. She doesn't rush. She doesn't look around. She walks like someone who already believes the space belongs to her. Her uniform is crisp. Her posture is straight. Her badge catches the light. And with that alone, she carries authority. Not earned. Assumed. She stops in front of Elena and Maya, scans their bags, then their faces, like she's inspecting objects, not people. Her eyes linger just a second too long. "Ma'am, you can't stand here," she says. Not loud, not angry, just flat. Elena blinks, confused. "We're waiting for our bus." The screen said this lane was open. Kara doesn't check the screen. She doesn't look around. She doesn't verify anything. She just exhales. Slowly. Like this is already exhausting her. That's not what the protocol says. She replies, "Protocol." That word lands heavier than it should. Elena straightens her shoulders. "I'm sorry. I just followed the sign." And there it is. The apology. Before any accusation. Before any wrongdoing. Kara tilts her head slightly. "Ma'am, if everyone followed what they thought was correct, this place would be chaos. Chaos. For standing in the wrong line." Maya looks up at her mom, then back at Kara. She doesn't say anything yet. She's watching. Elena nods quickly. "Of course, we'll move." But Kara doesn't step aside. She stays planted. "Your bags?" she says, pointing. "They're blocking the flow." Elena glances around. "They're not." But she doesn't argue. "I'll move them," she says softly. Kara watches her bend down, struggling slightly under the weight. She doesn't offer help. She doesn't step back. Instead, she checks her watch. "Next time, make sure you're actually reading the rules before setting up like this." Rules, not guidance, not assistance. Rules. Elena swallows. "I understand." Maya feels something shift inside her. Not anger yet, just confusion. Why is her mom being spoken to like this? Why does it sound like she did something wrong? They move to another spot, quieter, further from the screen, out of the way. And that should have been the end of it. But Kara follows. "Ma'am," she calls out again. This time louder, so others can hear. "You also need to keep your child closer. This is a transportation hub, not a playground." A few people glance over. Elena freezes. She is close. She says, "She hasn't moved." Kara folds her arms. It only takes 1 second for something to happen. It sounds like concern, but it isn't. It's control dressed as caution. Elena nods again. "I know. Thank you." Maya grips her mother's hand tighter. Her chest feels tight, and she doesn't understand why. They wait, silently. Minutes pass. Kara stays nearby, watching, like she's waiting for a mistake. Elena shifts her bag slightly, and that's all Kara needs. "There you go again," she says. "Blocking the lane." Elena looks up. "We haven't moved." Kara smiles. But there's no warmth in it. Perception matters. And from here, you're in the way. From here, from her point of view, from her power. Elena exhales. "We'll move again." She turns to Maya. "Just stay close." Okay, Maya nods, but her eyes stay on Cora. This doesn't feel like rules. It feels like targeting. Kara leans slightly forward. "Next time, if you don't comply immediately, I'll have to call security." Security. That word changes the air. It's no longer about order. It's about threat. Elena's heart starts to race, not because she's guilty, but because she knows how quickly situations like this can spiral. She lowers her voice. "I'm trying to cooperate." Kara straightens. Trying isn't always enough, and that's when it becomes clear. This isn't about protocol. It's about power. Because protocols are supposed to guide people, not humiliate them. Maya looks around. People are watching now, but no one says anything. She sees her mom's shoulders curl inward, the way her voice gets softer. the way she's shrinking to avoid conflict. And in Maya's mind, something clicks. Rules aren't being used to protect. They're being used to dominate. But right now, it's still subtle, still deniable, still wrapped in polite language and professional tone. To anyone watching casually, it might look like normal enforcement, just someone doing their job. But to Maya, it feels different. It feels personal. And to Elena, it feels familiar, because she's lived this moment before, in offices, in stores, in waiting rooms, that moment when compliance is no longer enough, when politeness becomes invisible, when dignity starts to feel optional. And neither of them knows it yet, but this is the beginning, the moment when rules stop sounding neutral and start sounding like judgment, and then it happens. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with a small, calculated movement. Kara reaches for a stack of luggage beside Elena. Not to help, not to move it out of the way. She lifts one bag just high enough and lets it drop. It hits Elena's leg. Hard. Elena gasps, her body jolting forward, not from the pain alone, but from the shock of it. "Oh, wow," Kara says instantly. "You really need to be more careful with your belongings." More careful, as if Elena had done this to herself. Elena looks down, then back up. "I didn't move it." Kara sighs, loud enough for others to hear. "Ma'am, I watched you. Your things are your responsibility. People start to look, not all at once, but enough." A man near the bench glances over. A woman stops scrolling on her phone. Someone behind them shifts closer. Elena's face turns red. Not with anger, with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she says again, almost by reflex. "I didn't mean to." Kara cuts her off. "This is exactly why we have standards. When people don't follow them, accidents happen. Standards. Accidents." Maya's heart starts pounding. She watched it. She saw Kara lift the bag. She saw her drop it. This wasn't an accident. Maya looks up at her mother. She sees the familiar pattern. Apologize, step back, shrink. Elena bends down to check her leg, brushing it off like it's nothing, like she deserves it. And that's when Maya moves. She doesn't scream, she doesn't cry. She steps forward. "You did that on purpose." The words land in the air, sharp and clear. Everyone hears them. Kara turns slowly. "Excuse me, you dropped it," Maya says. "You picked it up and dropped it on her." There's a pause, a real one. Kara laughs softly, like she's amused. "Sweetheart, you're mistaken." Maya shakes her head. "I saw you. Now the crowd is fully watching. This is no longer private. This is no longer subtle." Kara's voice tightens. "You should let the adults handle this." Maya doesn't move. She didn't do anything wrong. Elena reaches for her. "Maya, it's okay." "No, it's not okay." And Maya knows it. Kara straightens, her tone shifting. "Ma'am, control your child. Control. That word is a command, a warning, a power move." Elena pulls Maya closer. "I'm sorry. We'll go." And this is the moment most stories end. With retreat, with silence, with the victim walking away. Because that's what feels safe. But Maya doesn't step back. She belongs here. Maya says, "My mom belongs here." The space goes quiet. Not because she's loud, but because she's certain. Kara stares at her. "This is inappropriate." Maya looks straight at her. "You hurt her." The truth is simple, undeniable. And suddenly, Kara feels it. The shift. She isn't in control anymore. She's being watched. That's when her voice hardens. "If you continue to interfere, I will call security." There it is. The threat, not of order, but of punishment. Elena's breath catches. Maya, please. This is what fear looks like. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just a mother trying to keep her child safe in a system that doesn't feel safe. And here's the question no one likes to ask. Why didn't anyone speak up before Maya did? Why did grown adults stand there, seeing something wrong, and say nothing? It's not because they're heartless, it's because they're human. In psychology, there's something called the bystander effect. When a lot of people witness a situation, each person feels less responsible to act. Everyone waits for someone else to go first. And when authority is involved, that hesitation doubles. Because authority comes with fear. Fear of trouble. Fear of being targeted. Fear of being wrong. So people stay quiet. Not because they agree, but because silence feels safer than conflict. But children don't calculate risk the same way. They calculate fairness. Maya isn't thinking about consequences. She's thinking about truth. She dropped it, Maya says again. On purpose. The word on purpose hits harder than any insult. Kara steps closer. That is a serious accusation. It's the truth, Maya replies. A man in a gray jacket speaks up. I saw her move the bag. Another voice follows. So did I. Just like that. The silence breaks. One voice makes space for another, and another. This is how courage works. It's contagious. Kara realizes what's happening. Her posture stiffens. You're all mistaken, she says quickly. You're creating a scene. No, she created it. Maya holds her ground. You're lying. There's no malice in her voice, just clarity. And clarity is dangerous to power that depends on confusion. Now the station feels different, not like a transit space, but like a courtroom. Witnesses, statements, truth versus authority. Elena feels frozen, torn between fear and pride, between wanting to disappear and wanting to stand tall. Maya, she whispers. Maya looks back at her. You didn't do anything wrong. That's the moment. The moment when the roles shift. The child is no longer being protected. The child is protecting. Kara pulls out her radio. This is getting out of hand. Out of hand, because she's no longer in control of the narrative. But now, the truth is no longer quiet. And once a truth has witnesses, it becomes very hard to bury. But before we see what happens next, pause for a second. Because there is another version of this story. A version that almost happened. What if Maya had listened when her mother whispered, "It's okay. Let's go." What if she had taken a step back? What if she had sat down and stayed quiet? The station would have kept moving. People would have gone back to their phones. Kara would have turned away, satisfied. And Elena would have walked out with a sore leg and a heavier heart. No report. No witnesses. No consequences. Just another moment swallowed by silence. Elena would have told herself what she's told herself 100 times before. It's not worth it. I don't want trouble. Let's just get through today. And Maya would have learned something dangerous without anyone saying it out loud. She would have learned that when someone hurts you, the safest response is to shrink, to stay quiet, to pretend it didn't matter. Kara would have gone on with her shift. And the next day, and the day after that, with another traveler, another mother, another person who looks tired, unsure, and easy to overpower. Because injustice doesn't need approval to survive. It only needs silence. When no one challenges it, it grows bolder. It becomes habit. It becomes normal. And the people who cause harm learn a simple lesson: I can do this. And nothing happens. But there's another lesson being taught at the same time. To the ones who are hurt, they learn to doubt themselves, to question whether their pain is valid, to believe that dignity is something you earn by behaving quietly. That's the real cost of staying silent. Not just what happens in the moment, but what it teaches you about your place in the world. If Maya had sat down, the world wouldn't have changed, but she would have. She would have carried that memory. The memory of seeing something wrong and doing nothing. And that memory has a way of settling deep. It becomes hesitation. It becomes self-doubt. It becomes the instinct to apologize even when you've done nothing wrong. And maybe one day, Maya would grow into someone who stays quiet too. Not because she agrees, but because she learned that speaking up is dangerous. That's how injustice moves from one generation to the next. Not through cruelty alone, but through quiet acceptance. And that's why this moment matters. Because Maya didn't sit down. She didn't choose comfort. She chose truth. She didn't calculate risk. She followed fairness. And in doing that, she interrupted something bigger than one bad moment. She interrupted a pattern where power goes unchecked, where victims disappear quietly, where dignity is treated like a privilege instead of a right. Most people don't stay silent because they don't care. They stay silent because they're afraid of being embarrassed, afraid of being targeted, afraid of being wrong, afraid of making things worse. Silence feels safer than conflict, especially when authority is involved. But safety has a price, and that price is usually paid by the person who is already vulnerable. So when you ask yourself, what would I have done? Be honest. Would you have spoken, or would you have looked away? Because history is full of moments where change didn't start with power. It started with one person who refused to sit down, and that day, in that station, that person was a child. Not because she was fearless, but because she hadn't yet learned to be afraid of telling the truth. But right now, back in the station, something shifts. Maya's eyes don't go back to the floor. They don't go to her mother. They drift upward, to the ceiling, to the small black dome tucked in the corner above the waiting area, the security camera. At first, it looks normal, just another piece of plastic, just another silent witness. But Maya notices something strange. It isn't facing the benches. It isn't facing the luggage area. It isn't facing where people usually argue or wait in line. It's angled away, not broken, not damaged, just turned, slightly, deliberately. And Maya feels it in her stomach before she understands it in her mind. This wasn't random. She tugs on her mother's sleeve and whispers, "Mom, the camera, it's not looking here." Elena looks up, confused. At first, she thinks it means nothing. Cameras point everywhere. That's normal, right? But then she follows Maya's finger, and she sees it. The lens isn't watching them. It's watching empty space. And suddenly, this isn't just about a bag, or a rude comment, or a bad attitude. This is about intention, because cameras don't move on their own. Someone moved it. Someone decided where it should and shouldn't see. And that changes everything. Until now, Kara could hide behind emotion. She could say it was stress. She could say it was misunderstanding. She could say it was just a bad moment. But this points to preparation, to awareness, to control, to the possibility that what happened wasn't an accident, but a setup. Maya looks at Kara again. And this time, she's not just looking at someone who was mean. She's looking at someone who knew exactly where the line was, and stepped over it anyway. "Why is the camera turned?" Maya asks. Her voice is small, but the question is huge. Kara freezes. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough. Just long enough for silence to fill the space between them. And everyone feels it, because innocent people answer quickly. They laugh it off, they shrug, they explain. Guilty people calculate, and Kara doesn't answer right away. She clears her throat, looks around, then says, That's not your concern, not an explanation, not a denial, a dismissal. And that's when Elena finally understands something terrifying. This wasn't just disrespect, it was strategy. It wasn't just power, it was control. Kara had created a space where her actions wouldn't be recorded, where her word would be the only version that mattered. And suddenly, the balance shifts. Because this is no longer one person's feelings against another's. This is about accountability, about transparency, about whether authority is being used to protect or to hide. Maya doesn't back down. She takes out her phone. She doesn't wave it. She doesn't threaten. She just holds it, quietly, steadily, and everyone sees. Now there is a camera. Now there is a record. Now there is no hiding. Kara's confidence falters. Not completely, but enough. She straightens her posture, tightens her jaw, and says, "You are disrupting station operations." There it is. The shift from personal irritation to institutional threat, from annoyance to authority. Because when someone knows they're being watched, they reach for power. But power only works when it isn't questioned. And Maya is questioning everything. Why would someone move a camera away from where people stand? Maya asks, no accusation, just logic. And logic is dangerous, because it doesn't care who you are. It only cares if what you're doing makes sense. People nearby start murmuring, not loudly, but enough to feel. One man looks up at the camera and squints. Another woman checks her phone, recording already. The station, for the first time, feels like it's watching. And Kara knows it. She shifts from offense to defense. "This is inappropriate," she says. "You and your mother need to move along," but she doesn't touch them. She doesn't raise her voice, because now she's unsure. Now she's exposed. Because the moment the camera became part of the story, this stopped being about attitude. It became about evidence. And evidence doesn't care how confident you sound. It cares about what can be proven. Maya isn't trying to win an argument. She's trying to keep the truth from disappearing. And that's a very different kind of courage. She isn't loud. She isn't emotional. She's precise. The kind of precision that turns a conflict into a case. Before this, it was easy to dismiss what happened as drama. Now, it feels like misconduct. Before this, Kara was just a difficult employee. Now, she's someone who may have manipulated the environment. That's the moment the story changes. From something hurtful happened to something wrong was done. And wrong has consequences. Maya didn't plan this. She didn't set out to investigate. She simply noticed what adults had stopped noticing. Details, patterns, intent, and by noticing, she did something powerful. She removed the shield of plausibility. Because once you realize someone prepared a space to avoid being seen, you can no longer pretend their actions were accidental. This isn't a misunderstanding anymore. It's a choice to act where no one could hold you accountable. And Maya just took that choice away. And that's when the tone of the room changes. Not because someone raises their voice, not because someone loses control, but because someone with real authority steps into the space. Chief Harold Stone walks in quietly. No rush, no drama, just presence. You can tell immediately, this isn't someone who needs to prove power. This is someone who carries it. The murmurs soften. Phones lower. Even Kara straightens her posture. Because when real authority shows up, fake authority gets nervous. Chief Stone doesn't look at Kara first. He doesn't look at Elena. He looks at the scene, the people, the tension, the phone in Maya's hand, the camera on the ceiling. Then he speaks, calmly. What's happening here? Not an accusation, not a challenge, a question. And that's the difference. Kara jumps in immediately. as expected. There's a disruption. Chief, these passengers are interfering with station operations. Chief Stone nods slightly. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. Then he turns to Elena. Ma'am. Elena hesitates. Her instinct is still to minimize, to soften, to apologize. But Maya looks at her, not with pressure, with trust. And Elena speaks. She doesn't exaggerate. She doesn't dramatize. She tells the truth about the bag, about the words, about being blamed, about the camera. Chief Stone listens without interrupting. No crossed arms, no judgment, just attention. Then he turns to Maya. And you? Maya swallows. Her voice is steady. I just asked why the camera was turned away. That's all. But sometimes, that's all is everything. Chief Stone looks up at the camera, long enough for everyone to follow his eyes. Then he turns back to Kara. Why is the camera positioned like that? Kara opens her mouth, closes it, then says, That's not something I control. Chief Stone nods again. Who does a pause? Because now, there is no space to hide behind tone or attitude, only facts. Kara names a department, a supervisor, a vague process. Chief Stone listens. Then he says, Call them. Not loud, not harsh, final. And that moment is when everyone understands something important. Justice isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who speaks to the right person. Maya didn't argue with Kara. She didn't try to win control in a space where Kara had power. She changed the arena. She brought the truth to someone who could act on it. That's what real courage looks like, not confrontation. Direction. Chief Stone gestures to a nearby officer. Pull the camera feed. Now, no delay, no debate. Because when the right person takes responsibility, things move fast. Kara's jaw tightens, not in anger, in calculation, because now, the story isn't hers to control anymore. While the feed loads, Chief Stone turns to the people around. I need witnesses. If you saw what happened, step forward, and something incredible happens. They do, one by one. A man who saw the bag drop, a woman who heard the tone, someone who noticed the camera angle before but didn't think much of it. Silence breaks, not into chaos, but into truth. This is what power looks like when it's used correctly, not to intimidate, but to reveal. Kara stands alone now, not because people turned against her, but because facts gathered around her. The officer returns. Chief, the camera was manually repositioned. That sentence lands heavy. Manually. Not accidental. Not technical. Manual. Chief Stone doesn't react emotionally. He just asks. When earlier today, before the incident, now the story is no longer about behavior. It's about intent. Chief Stone looks at Kara. Did you request this change? The question is calm, but unavoidable. Kara hesitates. That hesitation is louder than any answer. I didn't think it was relevant. She finally says, and in that moment, everything becomes clear, not because she confessed, but because she avoided. Chief Stone nods once. It's very relevant. Then he turns to Elena and Maya. Thank you for bringing this forward. Not, I'm sorry this happened. Not, let's calm down. Thank you. Because speaking up isn't disruption, it's contribution. He turns to Kara again. You are relieved from duty pending investigation. No anger, no humiliation, just consequence. And that's what real justice looks like. Not revenge, not spectacle, responsibility. Kara doesn't argue. She can't. Because authority that is clean doesn't need defense. It stands on procedure, clarity, and truth. Maya watches quietly, not with triumph, not with fear, with understanding. She didn't win because she was loud. She didn't win because she was brave in the way movies show bravery. She won because she was precise. She found the right door and knocked on it, and that's a lesson most adults never learn. When injustice happens, yelling at the wrong person only exhausts you, but bringing truth to the right one changes everything. Chief Stone looks around the station one last time. This matter will be documented, reviewed, and addressed. Not might, not if, will. And suddenly, the space feels different, safer, cleaner, accountable, because justice doesn't need drama, it needs structure, and courage doesn't need volume, it needs direction. That day, a child didn't overpower authority. She aligned with it, and in doing so, she reminded everyone what authority is supposed to be for. But here's where the story stops being about one employee, one argument, or one bad moment. This is where we talk about rules. Because every time Kara spoke, she wrapped herself in the same shield. Protocol, standards, procedure. Those words sound clean. They sound official. They sound unquestionable. And that's exactly why they're powerful. Rules were created to protect people, to make spaces fair, to make power predictable, to make sure no one gets treated differently based on mood, status, or personal bias. But when rules are used without humanity, they stop being protection. They become weapons. Because a rule without compassion doesn't serve justice, it serves control. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Most discrimination today doesn't come wearing hatred on its face. It doesn't shout insults. It doesn't announce cruelty. It hides behind policy. It says, "I'm just doing my job. I'm just following guidelines. This is standard procedure." And suddenly, harm sounds professional. Kara didn't say, "I don't like you." She said, "This is how things are done." She didn't say, "You don't belong." She said, "You're not meeting the standard." That's how dignity gets stripped away quietly. Because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a technicality. But ask yourself this. When a rule is enforced, who does it protect and who does it harm? Real rules are meant to protect the vulnerable, to keep power from being abused, to make sure everyone gets the same respect. But when a rule is used to humiliate, to intimidate, to silence, it has already lost its purpose. That's no longer law. That's leverage. And the most dangerous part, the person using it often believes they're doing nothing wrong because they're not acting on emotion. They're acting on procedure. But procedure without conscience becomes cruelty with paperwork. That's why Chief Stone's presence mattered so much. He didn't dismiss the rules. He didn't ignore protocol. He applied them correctly. Because true authority doesn't hide behind regulations. It uses them to protect people, not power. When Kara said, "You are disrupting station operations," she was trying to flip the story. She wanted the focus on order, not behavior, on disruption, not harm, on control, not accountability. That's a classic move. When someone is losing the moral argument, they retreat to the technical one. They stop asking, "Was this right?" and start asking, "Was this allowed?" But justice doesn't start with permission. It starts with dignity. The difference between law and justice is simple. Law asks, "Did you follow the rules?" Justice asks, "Did you treat someone as fully human?" And sometimes, those answers are not the same. That's why a system needs people like Chief Stone, not to enforce rules blindly, but to interpret them responsibly. Because a rule without context becomes a cage, and context without rules becomes chaos. We need both. But most of all, we need courage. Courage to question when a rule feels wrong. Courage to ask who it's serving. Courage to say, "This may be legal, but it's not right." Maya didn't challenge a regulation. She challenged how it was being used. She didn't say, "There should be no rules." She said, "Rules shouldn't erase dignity." That's a powerful distinction, because rules are supposed to organize behavior, not justify humiliation. They're supposed to protect fairness, not disguise bias. They're supposed to bring order, not create fear. When someone says, "I'm just following protocol," the real question becomes, who wrote that protocol to protect? And more importantly, who is it hurting right now? Kara treated the rulebook like armor, like a shield that made her untouchable. But Chief Stone treated the rulebook like a responsibility, something that demanded clarity, not convenience. That's the difference between authority and integrity. Authority says, "Because I can." Integrity says, "Because it's right." And you can feel it when you see it. One makes people small, the other makes people safe. Rules should never make someone feel invisible. They should make them feel protected. And when a child is the one who has to remind a system of that, something has gone wrong. Maya didn't dismantle authority. She realigned it. She reminded the system what it was built for, not to defend those who wield power, but to defend those who are vulnerable to it. That's why this moment matters, because it shows us something deeply uncomfortable. Sometimes, injustice doesn't look like chaos. It looks like order. It looks calm. It looks official. It looks justified. And that's why it's harder to fight. You can see cruelty when someone shouts. But it's much harder to see it when someone speaks politely and cites a rule. That's how dignity gets lost without anyone raising their voice. But dignity doesn't need volume. It needs recognition. And recognition starts with one question. Is this rule protecting people or protecting power? If it's the second, it needs to be challenged, not violently, not emotionally, but truthfully. That's what Maya did. She didn't shout, she didn't accuse, she observed, she noticed a camera, she asked a question. She refused to let procedure replace humanity. And in doing that, she exposed something bigger than one bad employee. She exposed how easy it is to hide injustice behind organization, and how necessary it is to have people who are brave enough to say, being legal is not the same as being right. That's the real twist in this story. Not that authority showed up, but that integrity showed up with it, because rules can be written, but justice has to be chosen every single time. And just like that, the power shifts, not with shouting, not with chaos, but with quiet, undeniable consequence. Chief Stone gives a simple instruction to the officers nearby. Please escort Ms. Milton to the administrative office. No anger in his voice, no satisfaction, just finality. Kara blinks. Once. Twice. This is the moment every person who hides behind authority eventually faces. The moment authority stops protecting them. "Chief, I didn't do anything illegal," she says quickly. "I followed protocol." Chief Stone doesn't argue. He just responds calmly. "You're being removed pending investigation." That is also protocol. And suddenly, her own shield turns into her cage. The officers step forward, not aggressively, not roughly, professionally. The crowd parts. Phones rise again, not out of curiosity, but out of instinct. People know when history is happening. Kara straightens her jacket, trying to hold on to dignity. But dignity can't survive when it's built on control instead of integrity. She walks past Elena, doesn't look at her, doesn't apologize. And that silence says more than any argument ever could. Because when power collapses, it rarely does so with confession. It collapses with exposure. Elena exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. Her shoulders drop. Not from victory, from relief. Maya watches quietly, holding her mother's hand. No cheering, no celebration, just stillness. Because this was never about punishment. It was about protection. And now, the space feels different, lighter, cleaner, safer. But the story doesn't end there. As Kara is led away, a voice breaks through the quiet. I saw it, too. It's soft, almost afraid. Everyone turns. It's Lily Carter, the young employee who had been standing nearby the whole time. The one who looked uncomfortable earlier, the one who avoided eye contact. Her hands are shaking. I saw her drop the bag. Lily says, and I heard how she spoke to them. Her voice cracks. I knew it was wrong. There it is. The truth that carries more weight than any accusation. Chief Stone looks at her gently. Why didn't you say something earlier? Lily swallows hard. Because I need this job, she whispers. And I was scared. That's not weakness. That's honesty. Because most people don't stay silent because they're heartless. They stay silent because they're afraid. Afraid of losing income. Afraid of retaliation. Afraid of being isolated. Afraid of becoming the next target. Lily continues. But when I saw the little girl stand there, I realized if she could speak, I had no excuse. That's when it hits everyone. This wasn't just one act of courage. It was a chain reaction. Maya didn't just protect her mother. She gave permission to others to be brave too. Chief Stone nods. Thank you for telling the truth, he says. Not you should have spoken sooner. Not why were you silent, just thank you. Because justice grows when honesty is welcomed, not punished. Other voices follow, someone who saw the camera earlier, someone who heard the tone shift, someone who noticed the pattern. The system, slowly, begins to speak for itself. And this is what accountability looks like. Not humiliation, not revenge, correction, the kind that reminds a system who it's meant to serve. Elena feels something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not anger, not fear, validation. For the first time, she doesn't feel like she imagined it, or exaggerated it, or deserved it. She was right to feel wronged, and that matters. Because when injustice is acknowledged, dignity is restored. Maya looks up at her mother and whispers, "It's okay now." Not because everything is fixed, but because the truth was seen. And being seen is sometimes the first form of healing. Around them, the station returns to motion. People walk, announcements resume, life continues. But something invisible has changed. The system bowed, not to a child, not to anger, not to noise, to truth. This is the kind of justice people crave, not dramatic, not violent, clean, quiet, inevitable, because karma isn't always loud. Sometimes, it simply removes the mask. Kara walked into that station believing the rules were her armor. She left realizing they were her mirror. They didn't protect her behavior. They exposed it. Lily walked in believing silence was safety. She left knowing courage can be contagious. Elena walked in believing endurance was strength. She left knowing worth doesn't require suffering. And Maya walked in believing her mother belonged. She walked out knowing the world had finally agreed. That's what it looks like when a system bows, not to power, but to principle, not to authority, but to accountability, not to noise, but to truth. What Maya said that day sounded simple. My mom belongs here. But that sentence carried something much deeper than courage. It carried identity. It carried permission. It carried dignity. Because dignity doesn't start when someone else treats you with respect. It starts when you believe you deserve it. Psychologists call it the sense of belonging. That quiet, unshakable belief that you have a right to exist in a space without apologizing. That you don't have to shrink. That you don't have to earn air. When people lose that belief, they begin negotiating their own worth. They walk softer. They speak slower. They apologize faster, not because they are wrong, but because they have been trained to doubt themselves. Elena had learned that skill well, not because she was weak, but because life had taught her survival sometimes looks like silence. It looks like patience. It looks like choosing peace even when peace costs you. But Maya hadn't learned that yet. She hadn't been taught to measure her presence against someone else's comfort. She hadn't been taught that being polite meant being invisible. She hadn't been taught that rules were sometimes used as walls, not guidance. So when she spoke from a place that hadn't been damaged yet, a place that still believed belonging was automatic. That's why her words hit so hard, not because they were loud, but because they were pure. In psychology, belonging is one of the core human needs, right next to safety, right next to love, right next to identity. When people feel they belong, they stand taller, they speak clearer, they accept less disrespect, they don't ask permission to exist. But when people are made to feel like outsiders, they begin shrinking themselves. They tolerate behavior they shouldn't. They excuse treatment they don't deserve. They confuse patience with dignity. And that's the quiet tragedy. Because dignity isn't something someone gives you. It's something you stop surrendering. Kara didn't just challenge Elena's behavior that day. She challenged her right to be there, her right to occupy space without justification, her right to be unafraid. And that is the deepest form of disrespect. Not the insult, not the tone, but the implication that someone must earn their place among others. That's what Maya rejected. She didn't say, "My mom is good." She didn't say, "My mom is innocent." She said, "My mom belongs." That's a foundational truth, not a defense. Because belonging doesn't depend on approval. It depends on existence. This is why systems become dangerous when they forget who they serve. Rules exist to protect dignity, not erase it. Protocols exist to organize fairness, not justify exclusion. The moment a rule is used to make someone feel smaller, it stops being law and starts becoming control. And control always feeds on doubt. It feeds on the people who question whether they are allowed to stand tall. It feeds on the people who think their presence needs explanation. It feeds on the people who believe silence is safer than truth. Maya interrupted that cycle, not with aggression, not with hate, but with certainty. She stood where adults had learned to retreat, and that's why her courage felt contagious. Because it reminded everyone of something they used to know before fear taught them otherwise. That they belong, not because they are perfect, not because they are powerful, not because someone approved them, but because they exist. And once someone remembers that, their posture changes, their voice changes, their boundaries change. They stop negotiating their worth. This story isn't just about a child standing up in a station. It's about the moment a belief was restored. The belief that dignity isn't a privilege, it's a birthright. And when people truly believe they belong, injustice struggles to survive around them. Because injustice depends on silence, it depends on shrinking, it depends on hesitation. Belonging creates resistance, quiet resistance, unshakable resistance. Elena didn't walk out of that station just relieved. She walked out different, not louder, not harder, straighter. Because for the first time in a long time, she hadn't defended her existence. She had witnessed it being affirmed. And Maya didn't walk out proud. She walked out grounded. Because she had simply spoken what she believed was already true. That's the power of belonging. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight. It stands. So ask yourself something. How many times have you lowered your voice because a space didn't feel like it was meant for you? How many times have you apologized for taking up the room you already had a right to occupy? How many times have you stayed quiet, not because you were wrong, but because you were unsure if you were allowed to be right? That's not humility. That's conditioning, and it's reversible. The moment you stop asking whether you're allowed to stand tall, you already are. Dignity begins with belief, not performance, not validation, not permission, just belief. I belong. No one gives you dignity, not a boss, not a system, not a uniform, not a title. Dignity is something you decide to keep. It's the way you stand when someone tries to make you smaller. It's the way you speak when silence feels safer. It's the moment you choose self-respect over comfort. What Maya showed us wasn't bravery in the loud sense. It was clarity. She didn't ask for permission to exist. She didn't wait for approval to matter. She simply stood where she already belonged. And that's something many of us forget as we grow up. We start thinking space must be earned, that voice must be justified, that dignity must be negotiated. So we soften our posture, we lower our eyes, we let moments pass that shouldn't, not because we agree, but because we've been taught survival looks like compliance. But survival isn't the same as living with dignity. Dignity begins the moment you stop asking, "Am I allowed?" and start remembering, "I already am." You don't need permission to be present. You don't need approval to matter. You don't need validation to stand tall. You belong in your life. You belong in your space. You belong in your truth. And when you truly believe that, something changes. Your voice steadies. Your choices sharpen. Your boundaries strengthen. Not because you want conflict, but because you no longer accept erasure. This story wasn't just about a child in a station. It was about a reminder we all need. That dignity is not something you receive. It is something you protect. Every time you speak when silence would be easier, you protect it. Every time you hold your ground respectfully, you protect it. Every time you refuse to shrink to make others comfortable, you protect it. And yes, sometimes it will feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it will feel risky. Sometimes it will feel lonely. But dignity has never been built on comfort. It has always been built on courage, quiet courage, steady courage, the kind that doesn't shout, but never bows. So let me ask you something. How many times have you apologized for taking up space? How many times have you stayed quiet to keep the peace? How many times have you chosen ease over truth? Not because you were wrong, but because you were tired of being questioned. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But it also means there's something waiting to be reclaimed. Your posture, your voice, your worth. Because dignity is not loud. It doesn't demand. It doesn't attack. It simply refuses to disappear. Maya didn't change the world that day. But she changed a moment. And sometimes, that's how everything begins. With one person who doesn't sit down. With one voice that doesn't apologize. With one truth that doesn't ask permission. So as this story ends, don't just watch it. Let it sit with you. Let it challenge you. The next time you feel small in a room you belong in, remember her. The next time you're tempted to stay silent to avoid discomfort, remember her. The next time you wonder if your voice matters, remember her. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be certain. Certain that you belong. Certain that your dignity is not negotiable. Certain that your existence does not require permission. And if this story spoke to you, if it reminded you of a moment when you stayed quiet, or wished you hadn't, share that in the comments, because your story matters too. And maybe someone else needs to hear it to remember that they don't need permission either.